work with. So I'm going to set this to the side and prep some wires for solder. Now, when we're soldering wires, I'm just going to take this wire right here. It is a 20 gauge wire, and I'm going to just cut it, just cut a piece off, and use my wire snip. I cut that. Okay, now I got these two portions. These are two wires that I need to put together. If I'm working with a wire that I have the end readily available and it doesn't have like an eyelid or something on it, I won't put my heat shrink on yet. I'm going to be using heat shrink and not electric tape in this. Electric tape is for just bundling things. It's not really for covering up. You can, and it does work, but over time it fails. It will dry and it will come off. If you've ever messed with wiring harnesses, you know that. So what we're going to do is just strip these off. Now you say, well, how much do I strip? Well, I kind of just thumb it, honestly. I go about that much. It's not a ton. You don't want to go more than ½ an inch. Now, the larger the diameter of wire, the more you're going to need to strip back, obviously. But what you do is you take your pliers and then you find the gauge that it fits. And this is a 20 gauge wire, so I'm going to go in the very first slot, which is 20 gauge. And I'm going to go about that far. And you can always strip more off. It's not a big deal. And if you cut too much off, who cares? You know, you're going to cover it up with heat shrink anyways. So we're just going to strip it. You just want to do like that. If it takes wire off, you use the wrong setting. You need to change that. I'm going to go move those paper towels real quick because it's like reflecting light really badly. That's better. Okay, now we can work. Now I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Now you see I have roughly, almost ½ an inch of wire stripped back. I'm going to try to match that as best as possible, but really you don't have to be perfect with this. Your heat shrink's going to do a good job of covering it up as long as you did everything right. Okay, so now I've got my 2-inch stripped. Now with stranded wire, which is what you're going to find in automotive purposes, it has multiple wires. It's not one solid wire like you find inside of houses. There are people who use solid core wire in cars. That's wrong. You're not supposed to. Why? I don't know, but that's what I was told and that's what I go by. Likewise, you're not supposed to use stranded wire for home purposes. It has to do with AC and DC, and I don't remember. But anyways, you just want to take it and twist it because it's stranded. You don't want the strands coming out. You want to twist it super tight. So anybody who's a Snoop Dogg fan, or just, they know what's up. They know how to twist it. So we're going to do the same thing with our other wire. Now this is an ideal setting. We're out in the open. We can work, which is the best way. But most of the time you're going to be underneath a dash, or you're going to be somewhere awkward, and this is going to be difficult, and this is where you're going to hate it. But practice it and you'll get it right. I guarantee it. You'll do it right. So now what we want to do, you don't ever want to put the wires together like this if you're just doing a butt connection, like if you're going end to end like this. You don't ever want your wires to be done this way. It is wrong. When you solder two pieces of wire together, you're making a fixed joint in that. This wire is flexible. It bends. When you solder something together, it becomes solid. Now what happens is when that's solid, the rest of the wire is flexible. Well, the portion that's solid can't move. So if it's in a place where wire has to flex, like in a door jamb or something, it's more prone to break right where the end of the solder is. So you don't want to do it like this. Plus this is really poor and it's hard to wrap up. So we're going to do it like this. We're going to make an X, just a nice little X, and then we're going to twist them together super tight. Why super tight? So it doesn't come apart while we're trying to solder it. tighter you get it, the better. Now, I'm going to show you something. You want the wire to lay nice and flat. You don't want any of this sticking up. These little strands are very sharp, and if it sticks up, it will stick out of your heat shrink and you'll potentially short something to ground. If you don't know what that means, just follow my videos from now on and I'll tell you eventually. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm actually going to kind of prop this up so that you can see. I'm placing this on this wood block just so I don't burn anything. Now, my iron should be very hot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the iron and I'm going to place it right in the middle of that joint, right there. And I'm just going to put it there and let it get hot. Don't ever just put your solder directly on the iron. That's wrong. You won't get good permeation of the solder into the wire. And that's what you're looking for, is the solder to permeate the wire, not just coat it, but to permeate it. So I'm going to try to get you a little bit better angle on this. Hold on just a second and unravel some of this. And solder is really flexible. Of course, the larger the solder you have, the less flexible it will be. So, okay, maybe you guys can see that. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my solder. Now, this wire should be good and hot. And I'm going to go to right where the edge of the insulation is, right there. And I'm going to touch this. See, it's not ready to flow yet because it's not hot enough. Now, you can do what's called tinning the iron, where you check to see if it'll flow and see how it goes, and smoke comes off of it. That means that it's ready, that the iron is hot. So this wire should be getting hot very shortly. And you want to press down pretty hard. Now, like I said, you gotta wait for this to get hot. Don't cheat. Don't stick that to the iron and try to get it to flow on there. You can do that, but it's wrong because you won't get proper permeation. I have done it in a pinch because time is money and you gotta make money and you gotta get the customers out fast. But when you're doing this, you need to do it right. So you can come in a little closer, see if it's gotten hot yet. No, it hasn't got hot. Another thing is you want to work in a well ventilated area. When you solder something, there'll be gases that are released from this melting. It's the flux inside of it that makes a gas, and probably the tin that's on the outside that's melting too. I don't know what gases are being given off, but you don't want to breathe them. It's pretty bad. So work in a well ventilated area. If you're working up underneath a dash or somewhere confined, the best idea is to not breathe if you can avoid it. But as you can see, this is taking a really long time to heat up. And if you want, come back here on your iron, crank the heat. The hotter it is, the faster it's going to go, and the easier it's going to be to solder. So you don't want to melt the insulation, which sometimes you can avoid, but you want to try not to. And watch out, there's vents on this right here, and that gets really hot. So if you have it aimed at your hand or at a plastic panel or something to that effect, you're probably going to get burned or melt something. This puts out a lot of heat. So it's still not flowing. It's taking a long time. This is the problem with using an iron like this with this small a tip. You know, I hate it. I wish it would have gone faster, but anyways, we're just trying to get it to flow nice and easy. Alright, so once it starts, once the wire itself gets hot, it'll start to flow. And then you see a little bit of smoke. It's starting to warm up. It's getting there. So we got a little bit of solder on it. Once it gets hot, solder will always flow towards the heat, and that's why you put your iron in the middle and feed your solder from the end. You don't ever want it. You don't want to put your iron at the end and try to solder, because you don't want it to penetrate through the insulation. You want it to only be on the exposed bit of wire. just so you know.